with you.
and with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
It is Matthew chapter 23, verses 27 to 32. Jesus said, "Alas to you, the scribes and the Pharisees, you hypocrites! You who are like whitewashed tombs that look handsome from the outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones, of every kind of corruption. In the same way, you appear to people from the outside like good and honest men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Alas for you, scribes and the Pharisees, you hypocrites! You who build the sepulchres of the prophets and decorate the tombs of holy men, saying, 'We would never have joined in shedding of the blood of the prophets had we lived in our fathers' days.' So, your own evidence tells against you. You are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. Very well then, finish off the work of your fathers, the fathers began." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Brothers, today we enter our second day of the retreat, and maybe the Psalm 15 can guide anyone joining the novitiate, and there are various requirements of a person entering the novitiate. If you read Psalm 15, there are various things that we read there, that it is one who obeys God in everything, one who does what is right. The period of novitiate will be called to obedience in the Lord in everything, and one who does what is right, and is a person who keeps his word, the word that is true, sincere, and honest. In the novitiate, you enter into a school where you are transformed in order to be sincere, in order to be truthful, in order that your words can be counted upon, that you can take your words to the bank and you can be given a loan. He is a person who does not slander. I hear the other name now for the religious, for the priests, for the sisters, is slanderers, because our tables have become the slaughterhouses. We have messed as your elder brothers. We have messed as your elder sisters. But as you come into the novitiate, you are coming to bring new blood. And every time a newborn is brought into the family, God has only a message to these people, saying that He is not completely done with us. He is not completely disappointed with us. And you, my young brothers, you are coming in order to give us something new in the congregation. He is a person who does no wrong, according to Psalm 15. And it will be a period for us to try to do good and improve our shortcomings. He does not spread rumors. We are the people always who says, "Nilisikia, niliambiwa." In your period of formation and in your period of commitment to the Lord, be afraid, be worried about these words. Nilisikia, niliambiwa. Ulisikia wapi wewe? Uliambiwa na nani wewe? Avoid the rumors. He does not keep the company of wicked people. Along your way of formation, in your novitiate for the whole of this year, and for the period that you will ever be religious until you die, because I imagine that you are beginning this journey for you to go until death, always fear to keep the company of the wicked men and women. A novice, according to Psalm 15, will be one who keeps and honors all the promises that you make to God, and you know at the end of your year, you'll be making the promises and the vows of chastity, obedience, and poverty. And this person is a person who will do anything without looking for interest. You will work without profit. Yesterday we had already begun some reasons why we come to the novitiate, and yesterday we talked about 20 reasons why we come to the novitiate and the importance of the novitiate here for you. And we are going to add just a few others before we go to the understanding of the rest, the readings that are proposed to us. And we shall say that the novitiate will be a period where Christ will be formed in you. The whole period, like Paul in Galatians 4:19, will say that like a mother who is in labor, like a woman in labor, struggling that this child is brought to fulfillment, he is also inviting those who are the formation to struggle that the image of Christ may be formed in them. So at the end of the year, then we can talk of the imago Christi, that the image of Christ may be formed in each one of us. It will be a period of struggling to follow strictly, intelligently, and with reason the practice of the rule of life of the Palatines. You'll be told what your founder, Saint Father Vincent Parotti, wanted for you people, and you have a rule of life. It is the fifth gospel, because we have the four gospels, and our rule of life becomes the fifth gospel. At the end of the year, we shall come to listen to you talking about your experiences in the novitiate, which will become the sixth gospel, your life, that will become your life, that you are going to transmit to others. When you live in this novitiate for the period that you'll be here, be sure that your novitiate is a period of battlefield. This is a battlefield when you are fighting against your weaknesses, against your faults, against your sins. And it's also a period of purifications of your addictions. Quite often we come to the religious life with a lot of addictions, and it is the time to fight with the addictions, because we already have enough addicted people in the religious life. We have enough drunkard priests and drunkard sisters, and we can even take them, some of them, to the Olympics, and they will win. If there were competitions for drinking, we have enough sisters, we have enough brothers, we have enough priests who can compete drinking in the Olympics and win. You, our young brothers, as you come to the congregation, you're not coming to bring your drunkardness here. We have enough womanizers in the congregation. We have enough womanizers brothers, enough womanizer priests, enough, you don't know, the opposite of womanizer would be a mananizer. I don't know whether it would be a mananizer. But no, we have already enough bad characters who can win a trophy in the Olympics. Kindly, young brothers, when you come into the congregation, don't come to bring your addictions here. Tell the Lord, this year, Lord, I want you to purify me. And because the spiritual energy that you're going to get for the whole of this year is what will keep you moving for the rest of your life. And even learning to admit mistakes. Quite often you'll be breaking utensils. You'll be making a mistake here and there. Quite often, my novices and my community where I come from, they break a cup and they say the cup was broken. It means that there is very low responsibility. This person does not want to say, in my carelessness, I took the cup and broke it. We know that it is a mistake. We shall admit it is a mistake. But when you say, I am sorry, I broke the cup of the community. I am sorry that I have brought this loss to the community because I have broken this. It will be a place for you to learn to admit your mistakes, a place to live your openness. This is a place where you learn to trust in God, have faith in God, and trust in men who will be accompanying you. There are sometimes we talk about the external forum, the internal forum, and you have to harmonize the two. If you have a demon that is disturbing you when you speak, oh, you need to talk with your novice master. Tell him, I have a demon between my legs. If you wake up at night and you feel that you cannot sleep because there's a demon disturbing you, be open, my young brothers. Talk to your novice master. Tell him, I am going through this. I need your help. Don't be afraid of his decision. What you tell him is about you and him, and what he does with you is about him and God. Be open to him, and it will be a place for us to learn neatness and etiquette, the way we carry ourselves. Once you get the new titles as the novices now, you will be raised in a certain status in your congregation and in our religious life, our common life, and everybody will be looking to see what you are doing out there. You know, this morning, as we were talking about the call of Hosea, being called in chapter 2, verses 16, I will take you to the desert. And it is the language of lovers. God is talking to Hosea like you could talk to a woman. I will take her and carry her to the desert. And I will talk her mundu kumudu, heart to heart, and I will tell him the plans that I have, and I will restore these things to her. When you are called, you know, in Greek, the word vocare or vocation, or our call is in Greek kaleo, which means to shout at someone, to call someone, to scream at someone, to call someone to come around, to come close to you, or you give a name. When you call by a name. When God calls, he calls each person by a name. That's why when we read the call of different personalities in the Bible, you find the call of Samuel. Samuel, alisikia sauti hii, Samueli, iki, Samueli, mwiti. Peter, Samuel, Samuel. No, when God calls, when he calls Abraham, Abraham, Abraham. Whenever he calls anybody, he calls him by name, and that's why the Greeks would say, Kareo means to be called by your name. You also called to receive a new name. Every other time God calls a person, he calls and gives a name. Maybe you'll be like us. Signing, we sign with Augustinians of the Assumption, though there are some people who think that means Alcoholic Anonymous. It's Augustinians of the Assumption. And you also be signing your titles with Society of Christian Apostolate, meaning that you get a new title. And every new title comes with a new office, comes with new responsibilities. As novices, you'll be given new responsibilities, and you are called to an invitation. When the Greeks use the word kareo, it is an invitation to imitate. You're called to imitate and to take up a new office. You'll be given new offices. You'll be given new responsibilities. And you are called to be able to receive a reward. When they wanted to give you a reward for the work done, then they call you with the word kareo. You know that you're receiving a reward. When you make a mistake and they have to identify you in a parade for evildoers, like in the villages when people steal, if people are being called in order to be identified in a parade for punishment, they are called with the word kareo. After all that you have done, then they will look at for you and they will give you a reward or they will punish you. Now we see this great call as an invitation to live. Even in marriage, the man is called to be. When we read Genesis 2 verse 24, we are told, chapter 2 verse 18, for this it is not good for man to be alone. And for us, we are called into community living. We are called so that we can come to make a community of people looking for God together. And verse 24 of the same chapter of Genesis chapter 2, it will say, and for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and will be united with the wife, and they will become one body. I want to paraphrase that every brother will be called to leave the father and mother so that they can be united with the other brothers of his congregation so that they can become one body, the body and the nation of Vincent Parotti. Because when your father was thinking about the congregation, he thought it as a spousal union with Christ. He becomes the path that leads you as a religious in his congregation to Christ. So you become one body, one great nation of Vincent Parotti. And when you are called to live, you know you have to leave something. And you have to leave your past so that you can get a new present for a new future. You have to leave at least something of the past. You have to live physically. You have to come from all the way from Manyara. The other one has to come all the way from Sigida. Other brothers have come from Kenya. Others have come from Rwanda. And put together, you have to live something physically. You have to change your behaviors because the way you are behaving in the village. Ulikuwa kiberiti, ukiuzwa kidogo unaanza kulipuka kama kiberiti. This year is a year of transformation. You have to be a new person. Geographically, you have to live. And when you live geographically, you also have to live psychologically, because the old man in you, the old ways of reasoning, when you are not a novice, when you are not a religious, the way Paul would once talk about 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 10, I think 13 verse 10, 1 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 10 would talk of when I was a child, I used to think as a child, I used to see things like a child, but now that I'm a grown-up, I see life differently. And you be called in this year of your novitiate to start looking at things as adults. You know, you are representatives of the church. Wherever you will be called to represent us. Whatever you do, you represent us. It's also an invitation to leave your parents, to leave your brothers, because you are being withdrawn from your biological family, you are being withdrawn from your culture, you are being withdrawn from the world out there. You're taken to a solitude, to the desert, so that you can be formed for the same church and formed for your brothers and sisters. There must be a period of transition. You also have to leave something, the economical securities that we have. You know, there are some brothers and sisters you cannot touch because maybe they come from a kingly family, they come from a priestly family, they come from this family in their traditional setups. You can't touch them because economically they are self-sufficient. They have everything. Every other time you talk to him, these are not boils that they are here. Hapa yazima jifu because he has money. And people who are economically self-sufficient, in most cases they don't obey. That is why we profess poverty, so that we can be able to depend on God, we can be able to depend on others, we can be able to depend on the community. You have also to leave something that is cultural. Not the way you used to behave in the villages, in your culture. When you come here to make the culture of the religious, the culture of Vincent Parotti, the culture of religious life, it's a new one. It has to be integrated in the total man that you are. You have to change culturally. Then you have to be translocal. You have to go beyond locality. You know, some of you, the longest maybe you have been in the air is jumping from one trench to the other. That's the longest you have been in the air. But you are called now to think the world as a global village. You here in Arusha today, but your congregation spreads in all these countries, in Italy, in Kenya, in Rwanda, in wherever, Mozambique, wherever you are, think globally. Think about your congregation globally. But living also becomes the beginning of crisis. Whenever we live, even the child leaving the mother's womb, there are crises that are there. The umbilical cord is cut, there is a teething problem, there is also the separation and all these. Maybe even when you experience your first wet dream, it's also a crisis. In the religious life, you also have the teething problem. You have the wet dream experiences, and you have to talk with your formators and talk with them and be open to them, because living exposes you. When you live and come to a life that was not familiar to you, you become fragile. You become vulnerable. You become, and to make you broken, in order that you can count on God, you can count on others. You also lose an identity. When you come here, we don't know your parents. We don't know your brothers and sisters. We also sometimes don't know your capabilities out there. Maybe you could have been the best diver in the village, but here, because we want to protect you, we shall not be allowing you to dive anyhow, because we have to protect you until you become a brother. Then we can send you, and we put maybe for a pause for some time. If you are the best driver in your village, maybe in the novitiate here, they might not require your services as a driver. Don't complain every now and then and saying, I know this, I have this, because there is something that you do not know. The spirit of your founder. And this period will be for you a moment to be exposed, a moment of fragility, a moment of vulnerability, a moment of experiencing God's providence. When you have lost that identity, you know, people who have been called by God, they are told to leave their places. They lose their identity, like Abraham, like Isaiah, like Jeremiah. You know, you get a new identity that God is forming you into. You lose the familiar. And even when you are called, you cannot carry everything. Unaambia watu wa nyumbani, could you afford my house that I go with it to the shirika? Could you afford our land that I go with it? Could you afford everything? You cannot afford everything. You have to live. Maybe you are eating this or that. You have never eaten insects. Utakuja hapa, they start cooking insects for you. You have to admit, you know, I told you that the first time I ate frogs. I had not eaten frogs, and when they were brought at the table, you know, I love very much the meat and milk. I could see things, and I was thinking that they are the quills, the legs of the quills. And I was eating. Then in the evening, one of the priests came and asked me, Father Wawel, how did you feel the taste of the frogs at lunchtime? Then I rushed to my toilet, and I was trying to call Paul, and nothing was coming out. And he asked me, did you die? And I said, no. But then I was thinking, but why did you give me frogs without telling me? We knew that if he told you, you would not eat the frogs. But this is what builds a community. It may be that I'm not brought up with the frogs in our place. You come here in this community and they cook frogs for you. If the frogs do not kill the others who eat, why shouldn't you eat? They can even give you, when I ate the snails for the first time, I'm sure that my mother will never know this. When I ate the snails for the first time, I was observing my brothers eating the snails. The first month, the second month, third month, the whole year, I was seeing the snails at the table. And one day the brothers were asking me, but why don't you eat the snails with us? Saying, no, my mother has never given me frogs, we don't eat frogs. And his question of saying, kwetu hatufanyi, in our place we don't do this. You know, this question of kwetu hatufanyi, you know, when you come to the religious side, you cannot come and still continue saying kwetu hatufanyi, because kwenu ni wapi? Kwetu ni hapa, kwenu ni hapa. So you have to detach yourself from a few things, and when they give you insects, if they don't kill you, eat them. Maybe they tell you here, we don't provide milk, we don't provide this. Unless for medical reasons, you don't insist, you eat what they provide you, you give what they... And this is why, when you enter into the life of the new institute, and they are forming you for this, we are called also not to be hypocrites. We are called to be open. You know, the first reading that we have just heard, at the end of the letter to the Thessalonians, yesterday we made a little bit of a commentary why it was written, and Paul is still insisting, and he is correcting the people who had wrongly understood the second coming of the Lord. The parousia had been badly preached, and people thought that Jesus is coming soon, and therefore they had stopped thinking, they had stopped doing things that were mandatory for them, and there was that syndrome of Jesus is coming tomorrow, Jesus is coming very soon, and they could not do anything. And Paul wants to remind them that though they're in the world, they have to do something as they're waiting for God himself to come. And he is saying, as a man of God, as a religious man, I have to be working. And he was a tent maker, so that he cannot be dependent on the people he was working. You will be taught various trades, so that you cannot depend on the Christians for everything. You need a tissue paper, you have to cry to the Christian. You need a handkerchief, you need the Christian to give you. You need another way, you have to call the Christians to give you. But there are some, you will find generous people. There are people who know even our sizes. Every other time they find you on Sunday, they can give you a sadaka. When you open the packet, you find other ways. I don't know when they measure us. You will receive these gifts. And it is not a mistake to receive them, but when they come to ask you to show them where you put on the other way they gave you, that will be the problem now. I don't know where they get these measurements from. But Paul is saying that I have a trade of myself, and for the Pharisees and for the Jews, if you do not teach your child a trade, you are teaching him to be a thief, to steal. And could be in the world, there are so many people who are stealing because they have not taught their children, or they were not taught by their parents to work with their hands, so that they may not be thieves. In the rabbinical law, it required that any teacher, especially those who are working in the teaching field, not to be paid. They teach freely. In case they get gifts, okay, they can use them, but nobody should teach for a pay. And we find most of these had trades in order to take care of their daily bread. You can see some of the rabbis who were bakers, others were barbers, others were carpenters, others were masons. And for the Jews, they believed in honest toil. When you become brothers, in the novitiate you will be taught to be honest in your gain. Do not ask for free things. Do not go depending on the Christians every day. You know, the COVID has taught me quite a lot. I stayed at home for 4 months as a priest. Some other times, people in the village just see me, hey, Wawero. So some people do not remember that I'm a priest. Maybe some of the attachments we have with each other is the service we have, and you become very functional. You are priest to them as long as you are offering sacrifices to them. And it has taught me, in the 4 months that I was at home, I've learned to look at the church differently. I've learned to look at my ministry differently. I could go to the garden and work with my mother. Eat whatever is provided. I will not depend, if we were living for Sadaka, maybe I would have died for the 4 months. Now, we are taught as we enter into a novitiate to take care of ourselves and to learn not to depend on the Christians for everything. We can make we can take care of chicken, rabbit, bananas. We can every day we shall be shown some art. There are places they think that we only touch soil when we are burying people. Tunaguza mchanga wakati tunazika. Dust irudi kwenye dust, mchanga urudi kwenye dust, majivu yarudi kwenye majivu. There are people who have that connotation that sometimes we give them that image that as a sister, as a brother, as a priest, you do not work. But when you come to the novitiate, you'll be taught to work on your hands, with your hands, because most of the devices for our congregation is labora et orale, to pray and to work. To work is to pray, or to pray and work. Either they go together or one makes the other. Now he says that if a person refuses to work, he should not be allowed to eat. And there were so many idle people. And when people are idle, they gossip and they slander. And this is what was happening in the church of Thessalonica, that people are so idle, waiting for Christ to come, and they had started slandering and spreading rumor. And this is when they were analyzing Paul and saying he had run away from the prison. He is teaching for Monday. He is presenting his doctrines and not the doctrines of Christ. Because when people are idle, we say that idle mind is the devil's workshop. He is talking of his own handwriting, because people have started sending the letters and scare people. And this is found in the internet always. People are taking other people's names and writing on their behalf, and you imagine that this is the president who said this, or this is the deputy president who said this, or this is so-and-so who said this. Even our accounts are being hacked and people are spreading. Paul is saying, when you receive this letter, mark my signature and my handwriting, the way I'm writing, and I'm writing with big numbers. Maybe he had problems with his eyes, but he's saying, mark my handwriting, so that in case a letter comes after this claiming or purporting that is coming from me, do not accept it. If a letter comes talking about me, do not accept it. When people are idle, they have a lot of energy and a lot of time to slander. He talks of his handwriting and he asks the people to mark it, and he is teaching them the truth. He is praising them and rebuking them in an equal measure, and eventually he blesses he blesses this Thessalonian church with the grace of the Lord, and that is how that letter ends. Now we continue with our gospel reflection of yesterday. Yesterday we read the verses 23 to 26 of chapter 23. Today we are looking at verses 27 to 32. Last night, as I was reading this and was meditating, I came to find out that, the Hebrew Bible has only 24 books. The Hebrew Bible has only 24 books. The other Christians, when they took it, they multiplied the books. Some will have 39, others will have 45, whatever number you have. Now, I discovered that 2 Chronicles is the last book in the Hebrew Bible. So when they are talking of the killing of Abel, which is in the Genesis, in the beginnings, and in the end, Zechariah was the last martyr. Abel in Genesis is the first one to be killed innocently, and Zechariah, who had rebuked the king Joash, and there was an uprising, and he ordered that this man be killed, and he was killed between the sanctuary and the holies of the holies. Now, Jesus is coming again and calling us hypocrites. Yesterday, he was very radical on this, and now he's talking about hypocrites who are making the tombs. And the tombs, normally in Palestine, people were buried along the road, and in order to inform the people that there is a tomb here, they would paint it so that the travelers who are going to offer their sacrifices in the temple would not by mistake touch this, because if you touched it, you would become unclean, according to Numbers 19 verses 16. At the time of the Passover, many people and many pilgrims are going to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices to God, and because there is traffic of human beings from one side of the road to the other, you are supposed to be worried, and this is why they are marking the tombs along the way, so that you, who is coming, Numbers 19:16, if you touch it, you become unclean and you will not be allowed to go to the temple to offer your sacrifice, so that you usiingie katika unajisi, so that you cannot be desecrated. They had a responsibility of painting it so that everyone who looks at it can be able to see these tombs, and they were supposed to shine with brilliance, especially the month of Passover, when people are coming to Jerusalem. And they are portraying that it is all beauty out. But inside there are worms and maggots and bones. And quite often we are these people, we are these tombs. We take the perfume everywhere, mpaka Kismayu, everywhere. We are taking care of the body, the way we shave, the way we clean up. But the soul, when did you last think about your spirit? When did you last think about your soul? Maybe inside us there are all those bones that Jesus is talking about. These people are very good at making the memorial tombs, remembering the memory of those people that were killed, and imagining that if they were there, they would not have done the same thing that was done. And when Zechariah was being killed, we are told that he died saying, "May the Lord avenge for me." And there in the book of Chronicles, he is called the son of, here they call him the son of Barachio. In the Gospel, they call him the son of Barachio. But when you go to the Chronicles where he died, he is called the son of Jehoiada, which means that Matthew, when he was writing the Gospel, maybe he did not access the Chronicles, and maybe he used what he had heard in the Sunday school, and there was a confusion of names. That's how sometimes the Bible verses are not accurate because of the source that the person is getting from. Now, there is the question of rejection and murder in our gospel. Jesus is saying he knows that he is going to the cross. He is almost being rejected and murdered, and he is talking of the history of Abel, Zechariah, and now himself, because he is to be rejected and murdered. Abel, who is the first innocent person, and Zechariah, the last person of the Old Testament, now Jesus becomes one, the final man, the incarnation of those who have been rejected and will be murdered. And he knows too well also that the Christians will also be persecuted, and they will be rebelled against, and they will be killed. And now he wants us to ask ourselves, are we on the side of the Pharisees, the hypocrites of the Jews, or the helpers of God? There are only two kinds of Christians, the helpers and the hindrances. Am I on the side of helping the mission of God, or am I a hindrance? Throughout your novitiate, we shall ask you to pray constantly, asking God to make you a helper of the missionary work of the church and of the congregation, and you do not be a hindrance. We are going to pray for you, and we shall pray for one another, that this second day will be fruitful for us. And as we meet tomorrow, think about this through the night and ask yourself tonight, am I a helper of God in advancing the kingdom of God and the missionary work, or am I a hindrance? Amen.